When you think of the word feedback, what do you think about? What do you typically think about? When an employee hears the word feedback, do they gravitate to positive feedback, neutral feedback, or negative feedback? 9 times out of 10, when I ask that question, people typically gravitate to negative feedback. So I want to plant a seed with you. What if feedback was a strategy? What if every leader looked at feedback as a strategy, not something they have to give or get better at giving? Yet what if feedback was a strategy? So I want to share something with you that we did with a company that I thought was one of the most interesting things we've ever done. Company was struggling, workplace engagement scores were kind of plateaued, they weren't really improving. And what we had people do is just leverage strength-based feedback. In no way am I suggesting let's ignore constructive things. I'm not suggesting that, because I think we tend to be a little bit literal with these things. Like, well, you can't just always give positive feedback. There are things people do wrong. We know that. Yet this company did it. And what every leader did was for 3 times a week, they called people into the office for 30 to 60 seconds, and they provided positive strength-based feedback, meaning where they were performing well. Then once a week, they had to write out a handwritten card of where people were performing well and send it to their homes or drop it off at their desk. And then once a week, they had to send an email, but they had to copy their bosses, showing that they were promoting the employee who was getting the positive feedback. They stayed away from constructive feedback as much as possible. Here was the cool thing. Engagement scores went up 12 points. So think about that. Feedback isn't something that we reactively have to give because we're very triggered by what we see that is wrong and what we need to correct. Yet, what if we had a proactive relationship with feedback that was strength-based? How would people react? So think about this for a second. The Gallup organization, which I absolutely love the research, reports that 29% of people are actively engaged. The other 71% are actively disengaged or neutrally engaged. So 7 out of 10 people are kind of like, kind of here. Most people don't understand this, that when we give constructive feedback to somebody, we tend to get this. What do people do? They think, oh, they're agreeing with me. No, they're nodding, thinking, please tell me this is going to be over soon. And so we have to leverage feedback as a strategy. So think about the following strategy. Make a list of all your people. And I have a philosophy. We hear the right brain versus the left brain. I think we have a positive brain and I think we have a negative brain. I don't think we have a middle brain. As corny as that sounds. And I always love to crack this joke, and I've said this many times before in speaking in video, is, nobody goes home at the end of the day and their spouse says, how was work, honey? And somebody says, oh, neutral. I didn't have a feeling from 8 to 5. Every time I crack that joke, people laugh. Yet it goes to the psyche of who we are as people. Oh, I had a great day or I had a bad day. We tend to very manically depict what happened. The way we fuel people's brains and the way we fuel our own brains becomes the output of how we feel and how we interact with others. So the company that I cited before, 12% improvement in engagement scores. If you look at the research, good things will happen when we leverage strengths. Yet we don't do it enough because every time I ask an employee, what's your impression if your boss calls you into the office? It's never failed. Almost 100% people say, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? Why do they have that belief system? Because that's what occurs. So make a list of your employees. Who's got a positive brain? Who's got a negative brain? Don't give yourself any middle ground. Try to choose one or the other and create a scorecard in 90-day increments. Who's exhibiting positive mentalities and attitudes? Who's exhibiting negative mentalities and attitudes? And see what your percentages are and then hold yourself accountable. Hold yourself accountable of switching those numbers or raising those numbers for the positive brains. I share this with people all the time. When you think about people who go to work, they're getting their kids on the bus, they're packing lunches, or they're working at home, or they're homeschooled. There's a lot of stress there, right? If we're driving into work, most people do what? They turn on the radio or listen to music. Yet we don't strategically fuel our brains. So I want to share something with you that's really cool. I was running a session, and I ran a session with 3 different companies, and I played a really cool video on YouTube, and I just asked people to give me their perceptions. And 2 of the 3 groups, people are kind of like, you could tell they were having tough days, and we were near the end of the day in all 3 groups. And I played a video of a high school kid who, during the state wrestling tournament, lost, and his high school career was over. Probably would never wrestle again, wasn't going to wrestle in college. And saw a manager from another team who had Down syndrome, and went over and introduced himself and said, would you like to wrestle me? And staged this fun match, and kindly let the manager with Down syndrome beat him. And the place was going wild. And I played it for all 3 groups. All 3 groups, I had at least one group had 4 people with tears in their eyes. Perspective is powerful. Now, after watching a video like that, who would feel like complaining? You feel like a schmuck, right? Yet, the reason I shared that is we as leaders have that power to influence, to get people looking at things differently. Coaching doesn't just come out of our mouth. And the way you provide feedback isn't just saying, here's what you did right, here's what you did wrong. It's about providing feedback through an experience. So once they were done watching the video, I asked, so what'd you learn about yourself? One woman, I'll never forget it, said, how do you complain after something like that? And I said, so how often are you fueling your employees' brains? And everyone goes, we don't do this at all. One actually said, I'm going to start playing positive music at every meeting before we start. So remember, feedback is a strategy, but feedback is not just something that comes out as, here's what you did right or wrong. It's about facilitating an experience and giving people choices through the power of perspective. Let me know your thoughts.